Welcome to this opening ceremony of the North Atlantic Youth Hackathon called Think Rural, Think Digital, Think Ahead. My name is Jakob Brusa.
And my name is Øystein Andresen.
And the two of us will be hosting you and guiding you through this next hour. Now, Øystein, we have some fantastic guests with us today.
Absolutely.
In a few moments, we will hear from former President of Iceland, His Excellency Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson. We will also have a chat with two former winners of a hackathon who have made big success with their winning idea after that event. After that, one of the mentors from the competition is going to give you, the participants, some friendly advice before kicking off your work. So I think it's safe to say we have some very interesting things coming up, both for you participants, but also if you're following this just out of interest. But first, Øystein, you're one of the creators of that hackathon. Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to do this?
Sure, I can, Jakob. So there are several reasons for us wanting to create another hackathon after we made one last year together with the friends in Scotland, Highlands and Islands Enterprise. I work for the Nordic Atlantic Cooperation consisting of Norway, Iceland, Faroe Islands and Greenland. And we found out that together with Scotland, we could actually extend this hackathon to also include friends and colleagues in Canada and the US. So this time around, we've included Maine, that's the state of Maine, and Ontario in Canada, which makes this hackathon not only North Atlantic, but even transatlantic, which is really interesting. I think it opens up for many new perspectives, new solutions to common challenges that we all face across the Atlantic. Now, a year into the pandemic, we've seen that even though we cannot physically connect too much anymore as we could before, we can still connect, and so we do through digital communication tools. A pandemic often leads to austerity, but facilitating for getting people.
And these next 48 hours. Now, you mentioned that you have created this event with partners in Scotland, United States, and Canada. We will now hear from the Scottish side why they chose to, or wanted to contribute to the hackathon. So I'm happy to give the floor to Scotland's Minister of Europe and International Development, Ms. Jenny Gilruth.
Hello and good evening, or good afternoon for those of you who are joining us from Greenland and North America. It's a pleasure to say a few words to open this hackathon on rural sustainability. Let me first of all thank NORA and Highlands and Islands Enterprise for all their efforts with the organisation of this event. It's really heartening that even in the restricted circumstances that many of us are still experiencing, we can still come together and work across borders to address issues of such importance to us all. Exchanging knowledge and developing joint solutions to common challenges has never been more crucial. I'm therefore very pleased the Scottish Government was able to join international partners from across the North Atlantic region in supporting this event. Many of the challenges we share stem from rurality and low population density, which are, of course, the key themes of this hackathon. Scotland has 96 inhabited islands, with population figures often in the single digits. And while as much as 98% of our landmass is classified as rural, it contains only 17% of our population. From Dumfries and Galloway in the south of Scotland to the Shetland Islands, there are many positives to rural life. As has been clearly demonstrated during the pandemic, there is a great deal that we can learn about resilience from our rural and island communities. But we cannot take this resilience for granted, and we must understand the complex challenges that rural areas face. Young people's views and ideas are fundamental in driving positive change and informing new solutions that can help us build healthier, fairer and more sustainable societies. Earlier this week, the Scottish Government published its new population strategy. The document reflects on our demographic challenges, including the process of urbanisation that much of Scotland has experienced over recent years. In 2019, 25% of Scottish local councils experienced depopulation, mostly in rural and island areas. Addressing young people's needs and helping them thrive in rural areas is of a fundamental importance. This includes ensuring there are jobs and high quality services available, good infrastructure, connectivity and affordable housing. Much has already been achieved across Scotland, but we are conscious that a lot remains to be done, and we need to look at what we can learn from our international partners. The two key themes chosen for this event, sustainable tourism and digital health, are very good examples of those shared issues that we need to unpick together. The tourism industry is an important source of revenue for our rural communities. The increasing popularity of outstanding scenic areas across the North Atlantic region has led to rapid increases in visitor numbers. And whilst this rise in popularity is to be welcomed, it has resulted in some areas at certain times of the year experiencing pressure on infrastructure and negative impacts on some local communities. We must ensure that, while recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, our tourism sector becomes more sustainable, improving community well-being and contributing to our ambition to become a net zero society. The pandemic has also underlined the importance of providing all communities, no matter how rural, with access to high-quality health services. Scotland has already developed considerable expertise in this area. The use of digital services to support people to remain independent or manage their medical conditions from home has been one of the priorities for a long time and has been absolutely key to our COVID-19 response. Video consultations and telecare are already really a reality across Scotland, but we need to redouble our efforts to ensure that our communities have access to the best and most innovative solutions available. Today's hackathon can inform those efforts, and I'll look forward to finding out more about the proposals that will be developed. I particularly like the idea of creating multinational teams rather than having countries that compete with each other. This is about pooling our expertise and building on each other's strength, arriving at solutions that the whole region can benefit from. Far from being peripheral, the North Atlantic region can become a hotbed for innovation and a laboratory for the development of new solutions that we can then share with other parts of the world. This hackathon is a very good step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Minister Jenny Gilruth for those inspiring words. And now to our next guest. His Excellency Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson was the President of Iceland from 1996 to 2016 for 20 years. He is known as an outspoken supporter of North Atlantic and Arctic cooperation and is the founder and chairman of the Arctic Circle. Now, the Arctic Circle is by far the largest annual international gathering on the Arctic taking place in Iceland each year. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to give the virtual floor to His Excellency President Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson. President Grímsson, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much indeed for inviting me to participate in this remarkable initiative and wide-ranging cooperation across the northern part of the North Atlantic, reaching into the Arctic. And I'm especially pleased to follow the Minister from Scotland, because some years ago I took the initiative to raise the awareness in Scotland that there was indeed a world north of Scotland that was moving forward in a very dynamic way. And when I invited the First Minister to come and address the Assembly of the Arctic Circle, she acknowledged that perhaps her government had been too focused on what was happening in London and not realizing that the development and the innovation north of Scotland was in fact much more fascinating and more important for the future of Scotland. And I think therefore this event demonstrates this perspective of the 21st century, that whereas the communities in Iceland, Greenland, Faroe Islands, northern part of the United Kingdom were considered to be on the periphery of the world, we are now in the center of remarkable transformation and a new geopolitical platform where all the leading countries of Asia and Europe are trying to position themselves. So I think as we discuss the future of rural areas and the opportunities for health and tourism, we should be acutely aware of this fundamental transformation. I also often point out that it is a bit misleading, this fashionable and good term, the Arctic, which we often use and perhaps always use, because the Arctic is not just a region or a limited area. It is, if we put it all together, from Alaska across Canada over to Greenland, over the North Atlantic into the vastness of the Russian Arctic, we are talking about the part of the planet which is of continental proportions. almost as the size of Africa. And in the center of this newly important territory is what I often call the Center Arctic, which is basically the northern part of the North Atlantic Ocean, reaching into the Arctic Ocean, with the small communities of northern Scotland, Faroe Islands, Iceland, Greenland, northern Norway, which embrace this extraordinary territories. So as we pose the question, what is the future of the rural areas in the North Atlantic and the Arctic, we are in fact asking the question, what is the future of the Center Arctic in the 21st century, when all the major players of Europe and Asia, including also United States and Russia, are eagerly trying to position themselves. So we should not be hesitant about the opportunities. We should not be very reserved that we are talking about a territory in struggle, a territory in decline, a territory in isolation. On the contrary, we are talking about territories with enormous opportunities, perhaps more opportunities in this new century than ever before. I know it's a strong statement and perhaps surprising to some. So let me justify it with some examples and some argument. Let's take the pandemic, for example. Let's look at what has happened in the Faroe Islands, in Iceland, and in Greenland. I just take these three examples. These are small population, rural in essence, but their track record far exceeds what is happening and what has happened on the European continent. The Germans, the French, the Italians, the Spanish, and others would enviously be willing to replace their fate with the achievement. And why is it? Why is it that these three countries that I took as an example have fared so well in the pandemic? One is the reason that the new technology, the new information technology, the mobile connection on the Faroe Islands are an excellent example of an extraordinary progress. Might probably be one of the first countries in the world with a 5G possibility for every inhabitant, and a better connection you have in a small remote island of 12 people than you have in the center of Manhattan. And this connectivity and the way that the IT revolution has been embraced by these small nations I mentioned before has enabled the health services and the pandemic officials and the governmental authorities to create a defense network against the pandemic, which has produced extraordinary success. We are also seeing fascinating progress in remote medicine. We even have hospitals in New York sending the results of the examination overnight to India, where they are analyzed by medically trained people. And when the Americans in New York turn up the next morning in their hospitals, they have got the analysis from India. And I mention that because it brings to our attention that even in New York, people have to rely on remote medicine in order to have the high-tech hospitals functioning in an effective way. This is much easier in our communities where the closeness of the population and the support we traditionally give each other in the rural areas helps also to deal with preventive medicine and follow-up care. And let me finally give you an example from the first years of my presidency, almost 20 years ago or so or more, when I had this meeting, was the health minister of China who came to Iceland on a fact-finding mission. And I can tell you, I was a bit skeptical. What in hell is the health minister of China spending 2 weeks in my country, far away from Beijing? He should stay at home and take care of his people. So when he came to our meeting, I kind of asked him bluntly, why are you here? And the answer opened my eyes. of how others see the success of the small communities and the small nations in the North Atlantic. He said, we know that 50 years ago or more, you were very poor, as we were in Norway, Scotland, the Faroe Islands, Greenland. People forget Norway, for example, was one of the poorest countries in Europe 100 years ago. And we have seen you have managed to build a comprehensive healthcare system that ranges into tiny little villages and isolated farming communities far away from your capital. And this network is then linked to high-tech hospitals. So you have a comprehensive system that takes care of everybody, wherever they are. We in China, he said, have 500 million people in remote areas. We cannot afford to build a healthcare system that is only good for those who live in Shanghai or Beijing. And if the health minister of China comes to a remote island in the North Atlantic to look at best practices, it should open our own eyes that not only have we achieved something for our own people in terms of how we have developed the healthcare system in rural areas in the North Atlantic territories, but we've also given the world something to learn from. And I know from my own experience, there are others in other parts of the world who are also looking at these examples. So my conclusion and my message is simply this. Yes, let us continue to develop healthcare in rural areas with the support of remote technologies and information technology, where we can use analysts in India as well as the connectivity that the pandemic has demonstrated is essential for success in the pandemic times. And with that, I turn to the other area, which is tourism. The established wisdom previous decades was that the rural areas would somehow be left alone by themselves in the wave of new tourism. I remember in my hometown, Ísafjörður in northwestern Iceland, a small community of 3,000 people or so, even less, when an entrepreneur in the town said, why cannot we have cruise ships coming to Ísafjörður? Everybody laughed. But he pushed on. And they had to enlarge the harbor, and everybody supported that because, as we all know, if you live by the sea, everybody is in favor of enlarging the harbor. But to cut a long story short, before the pandemic, over 100 cruise ships came to Ísafjörður every summer. Every summer. The town was simply crowded with people from April until October. We have seen in Iceland, before the pandemic, an extraordinary growth of tourism in remote areas that we Icelanders somehow thought would always been left behind. And in Greenland, the city council of Nuuk has to discuss a proposal by a Malaysian business leader in hotels and tourism to build a new boutique hotel in Nuuk, in addition to his ownership of the largest hotel chain in Iceland. And why is a Malaysian business leader investing in hotels in Iceland and Greenland? The answer is that he knows that in the coming years, a wave of Asians will flock to our part of the world because they have never experienced being alone in nature. They have never experienced the interaction for your soul in being close to the mountains and the oceans, and to walk for hours without seeing anybody in safety. Not to forget the glaciers and the extraordinary wildlife that is on display. The number of cruise ships that have also come to northern Norway, Greenland, Faroe Islands, Iceland, Scotland over the last 20 years is also an indication of this transformation, because although it's difficult for us who have grown up in Iceland or the Faroe Islands or northern Scotland or Greenland to understand the fascination for people to being almost alone in the vastness of nature, in the northern wilderness. For people who have always been in a city of 10 million people, 15 million people, have never been alone, always in the multitude of people. It's almost like when we walk into the great cathedrals in Europe and we find the holiness of the place. These millions of people, for example, in Asia, they discover a similar holiness when they come to the rural northern Atlantic, Arctic parts of the world. It's not just the Northern Lights, which we all know is almost a religious experience for these people, and we kind of smile that they are willing to travel across more than half of the globe to just see an hour of the Northern Light. So my conclusion regarding the future of tourism in the rural part of the North Atlantic and the Arctic is that our task is to prepare ourselves for the multitude of people who will on their own flock to our part of the world. Our problem will not be to attract people. Our problem will be how will we deal with the multitude of people who want to come? How do we allow them to share in what we could call the holiness and the spirit of the North Atlantic and the Arctic nature? So all of this brings me to my fundamental conclusion. As you discuss and encourage people to come forward with initiative regarding the rural areas in our part of the world, it is a wealth of opportunities. It is a fascinating collection of resources. And it only requires our own imagination and our willpower and our cooperation to make the most of it. Because not only has our part of the world become crucial for the new geopolitical structure in the world, it's also become crucial for these fundamental strands in the evolution of the 21st century. So I say to young people, you are lucky to have ahead of you this wealth of opportunities in the coming decades. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to address all the hackathon participants and our viewers, President Grimson. Very inspiring words, I think, Øystein, from the President on both the wealth of opportunities, but also the challenges that we are facing in our communities. And I think some very good ideas there to start with for the participants of this hackathon. Yes, we have some other guests as well coming up.
Yes, we do. So turning then from one Icelandic to two others. We are now very pleased to introduce two former hackathon winners, or let's just call them hackathon winners, who have been able to make a profit out of their winning idea. Kjartan Thorsen and Atne Jonsen participated in a Nordic Health Hackathon held in Reykjavik in Iceland in 2019 with their idea of an opioid tapering website where they could create a personalized tapering plan for their patients in just a few seconds. The solution led to them create their own startup, the Nordverse Medical Solutions, and now they have their own team of programmers and designers.
Kjartan and Atne, great to have you here with us.
Thank you very much.
First of all, can I just ask, tell us a little bit about your idea from that hackathon.
Yeah, so I think it's best just to start with the background. Me and Kjartan are both medical doctors, and when we participated in the hackathon, we were in the final year of medical school here in Iceland, and we were working as assistant doctors in the orthopedic ward in the university hospital here in Iceland. And that was quite a busy work. We often had long days, had to skip lunch because we were so stacked with tasks, and we had really inefficient ways of completing some of those tasks. And a lot of our patients in the orthopedic ward had either some major surgeries or had suffered some trauma and needed strong pain medications like opioids, such as OxyContin and morphine. And one of the tools that doctors use to, to prescribe these medications responsibly is to give their patients a plan about how they're supposed to reduce the dosage of these medications gradually over time after they go home from the hospital. But we realized that this takes quite a lot of time and effort because these plans have to be individually created for each patient. And we simply didn't have those extra, minutes in the day. And in our market surveys, we see that it, on average, takes doctors around 10 to 15 minutes to create these plans. But we thought to ourselves that we could somehow automate this process and make it more efficient. And with this idea, we entered the hackathon here in Reykjavik and created our solution, which enables doctors, as Øystein said, to create these tapering plans in a few seconds instead of spending 15 to 20 minutes on creating them.
Where has that brought you today?
A lot of things have happened. This basically what the hackathon did in the beginning is it opened up the opportunities for us that we had never imagined were possible or were imaginable for us. So just to understand, like Árni said, where we were coming from, we were medical students. So basically we were at the lowest point of the food chain, and we had no confidence in that we could actually change how the system worked. But for some reason which we thought was pretty stupid of us to do, is that we signed up for the hackathon, and we had pretty fair programming skills, but we knew our problem really well, and this led to us winning the competition. And that, I would say that the essence of it is that we gained a certain understanding of that we could actually solve problems. And that is the key that has led us to further parts. And I don't know if we could say our success, at least we just really gained this kind of opportunistic view that we could solve problems. So since then, we have kept on developing our idea or our solution, Niðurtröppun.is, that we designed in the hackathon, and now we have a successful health tech startup, and we have about 5-6 employees, and I received about a few months ago, almost $500,000 in grants. So this opened up opportunities that we had never known would exist for us.
Very exciting to hear about your brilliant ideas.
Seizing opportunities is obviously a key to entrepreneurship. In your opinions, what's the most rewarding and perhaps also, let's say, the toughest sides about being an entrepreneur?
So I guess that one of the most rewarding things that we experience right now is that we have a saying. We can actually shape the future, both of our work and basically health tech, and we can if we want to. Basically, sky is the limit, like a man once said. We can change the things that we want to change in the future instead of like we were used to, and that was basically our perspective of the future. That we just had to, if we had some inefficient work progress that we had to follow, we just had to run faster because it was so inefficient. That was our prior look on things. But after we kind of gained our entrepreneurial vision, now we find problems and we speculate if we can solve them, and we solve them. At least we try to. So we can make a change. That's a really rewarding feeling. But the cons, of course, is that we are solving headaches. So if you want to create solutions, it's really good if you have experienced the headache. So we have to kind of like implement headaches on ourselves. And also, I mean, this is basically like going to a jungle that you're not familiar with the circumstances. You never know what's going to happen next, and you always have to think one step ahead of time. You don't know what's going to happen a few months from now, and you're inventing the wheel like as you go. So some things that you thought was like stable conditions a month ago, everything has changed. You have to just readjust. So having a really good team and a good support from your colleagues, and also just really like if you have talented people around you, you can move mountains. So being really capable to solve problems and react to problems, that's a good thing. But again, that's something that you have to rely upon, because let's say if you're in a big corporation, you have a lot of people and you have a lot of human resource. But for example, in a startup, you're maybe just like 4 or 5 people, even like 1 or 2. You just have to be really creative, and you have to. You can't be afraid. You just have to face the problem, look it in the eye, and think of a solution. Think of a solution, and again and again and again. Oh yeah.
That's some great advice. And we see how technology has helped. I mean, in the area that you're working in, a great facilitator of progress. Another area as well is the ability to work remotely and work across countries, which we've never seen before as much as we are doing today. Now, all of the teams in this hackathon are international and work together remotely. What do you think are some of the benefits and challenges of having an international team when starting a business?
So we, at least in our case, we've had some experience with working with international teams. We've had some of our programming work done by developers in Sweden, and we're working with advisors who are international, as in not based in Iceland. But I think one of the keys to succeeding in this kind of startup world is to have a diverse team, because it's kind of easy to surround yourself with people who think like you, and maybe in the beginning it's really good if everyone is thinking in the same way, because it looks like you're all going towards the same path. But as Kjartan mentioned, as soon as you start facing the problems and the challenges, it's really good to have people who think in different ways and have different backgrounds. So I would say that it's a really big strength to have people from like different cultural backgrounds, as well as just with different talents and education in your team. So that's a really big strength of having an international team. But I would say there are some challenges in working remotely, because if you're at least at the early stages in a startup, you're always like things are moving really fast. I think it's a bit difficult to keep up with the changes if you're not meeting people several times a day to discuss, or at least once a day to discuss what they're doing and how their things are developing. So I think that can be a challenging aspect of working with someone who's not in the same physical location as yourself. But when in the further stages of like expansion to different countries, I think it's also a big strength to have people with, like let's say you have people all around the Arctic. You can, if you were working from Iceland, you could maybe have someone on your team who is really knowledgeable with how the market in the US or Canada is, or which you wouldn't have if you only had Icelanders on your team.
Maybe one thing to add to that is that, for example, here in Iceland, this is a really good, for example, development market to develop your ideas. So like going through your research and development phase, it's brilliant. But we're a small nation. But then again, when you're developing your software, for example, in health tech at least, you have to develop it and you have to go through like evaluation of your software. It's really good to have like this like certain field where it's really easy to develop and verify your idea. But then again, due to the small market size, it's really hard for us to develop, for example, a business model, because we have, for example, let's face it, the US market, it's 1,000 times bigger than Iceland. So it's really hard to kind of like develop idea like through all stages of society in the US. It's really easy here. But then again, creating a valuable profit that could, for example, show an interest to a VC or something, it's hard if the market is only 300,000 people. So that's also a con when you're, for example, developing here in Iceland. But then again, we have certain connections to develop. But then again, people in the US or Canada or even Scotland and Norway, they have bigger market size. So it's easier to develop, the business model and creating customer segments and stuff like that. So it's pros and cons also towards the market challenge.
If we go back to the hackathon in 2019 that you won with your idea, can I just ask what was your best experience from that event?
I think for us, when we came into the hackathon, we didn't really have much knowledge about any programming. I mean, I know a little bit of programming, and both of us, were still in medical school. We still had our, I think 8 or 10-year-old laptops, and we came in there and there was a lot of people who had programming background, software engineers or students in software engineering and computer science, who had these amazing rigs with dual monitor layouts and mechanical keyboards and everything. It looked like they were just professional, programmers / gamers there. And I think we saw a lot of solutions in the hackathon here who were superior to our solution in the sense that they had way better programming. They were more complicated, more thought out in that sense. But our solution stood out because it was solving a real problem, because we just solved a problem that we were working with every single day at the hospital. So, I mean, it kind of, the highlight from the hackathon for me was to realize that the knowledge of the problems in the system is actually something that can be more valuable, or at least as valuable as being able to execute the solution. Because some part of the team has to have a knowledge of the problem, another part of the team can have the knowledge to implement the solution to solve that problem.
Now, before we are rounding off this interview, I would like to ask you one last question, which I think is very interesting to many of our participants. Many of them are doing their hackathon for the very first time. They are maybe a bit unsure how to pitch their idea, how to persuade the jury that their idea is the very best. And I was wondering if you had any advice to them. What should they think about when they are pitching an idea on Sunday?
Definitely. So regarding the pitch, keep it as simple as possible. And while you are creating your solution, be really specific about the problem that you're solving, that the problem exists. If the problem does not exist, or if it's not a really, really big problem, or as you call it, a headache, if it doesn't give people a headache, then you should at least try to find a headache that you're solving. Try not to try not to solve all the problems in the world. Try to have it as specific as possible, almost so you can just put your finger on the problem. If you can choose between we could solve really diverse problems for a lot of different groups, or we could really easily solve this specific problem that is of really big value to this really certain group of people. Try to focus rather on that. Just have it kind of a realistic plan. You don't have to save the world in one hackathon. You take it step by step, and just be really, really, really thorough about your explanations and how you pitch your idea. Just be really simple and kind of think of it as you were explaining your idea to your grandparents or a 5-year-old child. If you have a really high status academic, a lot of jargon words, it won't help you. It's better to think of it in a marketing sense. I mean, you only have 2 minutes to show people what you're creating. So imagine that every word costs $1 million, and you have to pay for it with your own money. Money puts things in perspective, unfortunately.
Indeed.
Powerful, a very powerful image right there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kjartan and Arne, thank you very much for joining us tonight. we are very happy to have you with us.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much
us.
for the opportunity. Good luck.
Thank you. So, having heard from previous hackathon participants and even the winners of the competition, we now are circling back to you, the participants, in this hackathon, Think Rural, Think Digital, Think Ahead. Now, a hackathon is a process. It's not an end product. And one important thing of a hackathon is to get feedback on your idea throughout this process. In this hackathon, this will be given to you by your dedicated mentor. And you will meet with your mentor 3 times throughout this weekend. Let's now hear what one of the mentors, Dr. Tom McCallum, wants to say to you all before kicking off your entrepreneurial journey. Tom, you
Hi
have the floor.
everyone, my name is Tom McCallum and I'm a lecturer here at the University of Highlands and Islands in Scotland. It's great to see so many of you joining us for the hackathon this weekend. I know you're going to have fun, generate some amazing ideas and meet some new friends. So before I launch into my top 5 tips, let's dive into the jury's criteria that they're going to review your solutions on. So this year the topics are digital health and rural tourism. If you have not chosen your topic yet, then I suggest you have a short period, perhaps 30 minutes, where you brainstorm each of them and see which one best resonates with your team. So the 5 jury criteria are as follows. Relevance. So whatever you pick, you want to make sure that you say why your solution is relevant to either digital health or rural tourism. The second criteria is demand. Is there demand for your proposed solution in the region or elsewhere? How do you prove that? Going global is what all startups hope to do, and so a winning entry might want to look at 2 to 3 places around the world where the solution might get traction. On a roadmap, you might pick your favorite and then trace your route out to global domination. Third criteria is originality. So being original is hard. I like the phrase, the original idea is created when 2 other ideas meet for the first time. If you try and be original from the start, you might find it really hard and it might paralyze your team. So try and come up with as many different ideas as you can, and slam them together and see which ones you like. The fourth criteria is the probability of success. So how viable as a business is your solution and how scalable is it? So that's linked to the demand aspects and going global. How might you fund the initial minimum viable product? Identify any blockers that might cause you to fail prematurely and have a plan to mitigate those. Finally, all ideas need to align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. How does your idea fulfill 1 or 2 of these goals? They can be indirectly or directly, such as sustainable packaging or supporting economic growth. Clearly say how your solution addresses the United Nations Sustainability Goals. So there you go. Those are the criteria that jury will be using. And now let's get to the tips. So these are hints and tips based on my experience as a mentor from last year. Here are my top 5 tips, starting at number 5. Take time to get to know each other. You are located in many different countries and all have varying backgrounds. What media skills do you all have? What are your hopes and fears for this weekend? What are your backgrounds? Are there challenges such as family life that might get in the way and mean that you have to work at awkward hours? Take some time to really explore each other's motivations and what you want to get out of this weekend, and then make a plan. Number 4, go wild. Generating the first idea might be quite easy, but try and generate a lot more and try and really expand the variation. It's going to get harder, but hopefully you'll end up with a much more rewarding idea in the end. If you have come with an idea, I urge you to be flexible and add it to the pot, But don't be too precious about it or worried if your team doesn't pick that idea to move forward with. Ignore the laws of physics and identify what is your perfect solution. And once you've consolidated around a few of those perfect solutions, then start to reimpose the real life conditions. And then you can start making them more realistic. But aim for the disruptive idea first. Tip number 3. Iterate, iterate, iterate. No idea comes out perfect first time. Prepare for the idea to evolve over the 48 hours. With this in mind, start on your presentation early. There's nothing worse than getting to 1 p.m. on Sunday and having nothing to show for your hard efforts. You never know when somebody's going to lose internet connection, and you don't want to have a panic last thing. So, tip number 2. Evidence your idea by using your network. Who do you know, or who could you reach out to test your assumptions? Could you get some feedback? Could you do a little survey? What data can you use to back up your claims? Make your idea come to life for the judges. 2 minutes is not a long time, so you can keep the messaging simple and direct. Finally, tip number 1, enjoy yourself. You will have challenges this weekend and team members may drop out, life may get in the way. But remember that your goal is to get something submitted and then it's out of your hands. Enjoy the experience, enjoy meeting new people, and try not to get too worried or stressed out as you go through. So, I hope that was helpful. I'm really excited to see what you all come up with and wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you so much, Tom, for excellent advice for the participating teams. Øystein, we are closing the end of this opening ceremony. Before finishing off, I'm thinking about going into some practical things about the weekend. Could you say a few words about what's going to happen over the next few days?
Of course. So the competition will now last for 48 hours, or 48/7 now soon, meaning that all ideas should now be submitted by Sunday at 6 p.m. GMT. The other local time zones are now coming up on the screen. And by then, you should have submitted your final product to be assessed by the jury. I think you also all been assigned to a team already on Slack, which is the portal or the platform that is used for this hackathon. And Slack is a very good way to communicate with your team. You can either chat there, or you can also video chat through Slack. But you are of course free to use Slack or other platforms as you like. However, when you are communicating with your mentor, especially the first time, we ask you all teams to use Slack for that purpose.
What about when they present their proposals? What should they do?
So, the proposals should be a video of up to 2 minutes. So max 2 minutes, very important, which is a pitch, as we talked about before. Now, 2 minutes is not a long time, Jakob, so it's difficult to get everything in 2 minutes video after you've worked 48 hours on an idea. So, you are also allowed to add another document, a document up to 5 pages, elaborating more on your idea, with a title and the name of the project and the idea that you have. I would advise all teams to try to upload a test of a video and a document, perhaps already tomorrow, just to check that the portal is working for you, the system is working for you. And it also might take some time depending on your internet bandwidth.
Okay, so based on some of the advice that we've heard tonight, start by aiming wide, think broad, brainstorm, within the themes that we have set, and then really take it down and be as specific as possible when you do the proposal.
And
Right.
enjoy, not least, enjoy.
Enjoy the work process, the whole brainstorming, the
mentor
whole
said,
idea-making process definitely is a very interesting, exciting process. Øystein, tell us a little bit about the prizes and the who's going to win and all that.
Yeah, so we've got great prizes, I think. For the first theme, the digital health theme, we have cash prizes, 40,000, 30,000 and 20,000 Danish kroners for the first three places. In addition to that, we have a 12 weeks acceleration program, Accelerator as it's called, which will be added to the 40,000 Danish kroners for the team that gets the first prize. Now, the Accelerator is a 12 weeks program, as mentioned, where you will get insight into all aspects of building a business from skilled, experienced experts from all over the world. On the other theme, the rural tourism theme, there are also cash prizes, the same cash prizes as for the digital health. However, the first prize there wins another prize, which is the subsidized trip to the Faroe Islands in September this year for a conference on regenerative tourism. In this conference, you will be able to meet with the tourism industry and pitch your idea to those that might even be interested buyers of your idea. So I think there are several reasons to give it all through these next 2 days, Jakob, and I hope definitely that it's motivating for all participants.
Most certainly. And you get to win a potential trip to the Faroe Islands, which is definitely a catch, I would say.
That's everything. Yeah.
That's everything. One final question. What if the participants have any questions throughout the weekend?
Yeah, of course, there might be questions showing up, and we are very open to answer those as much as we can, either on Slack, preferably actually on Slack, through the channels that you have been accessed there. But if that doesn't work, then use also our email address or even call us or me. You'll find our contact information on thinkrural.org.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Øystein. I think that is all the questions we're going to have now. And for the participants, you have the opportunity to ask follow-up questions if you want. Everyone else, we're approaching 7 p.m. here in the Faroe Islands, and that means the kickoff ceremony is about to come to an end, and your journey begins. So let me just close off with the theme, the title that we've been saying quite often tonight. Think rural, think digital, and think ahead. That's the challenge for this weekend. So we'll see you for the ceremony, on the award ceremony on Tuesday, same place, same time. Good luck, everyone.